The day I found out, I was just folding laundry. That's the part nobody tells you about betrayal. It doesn't arrive with dramatic music or a big warning sign. It arrives on a random Tuesday afternoon while you're matching socks, and your mother-in-law is sitting right there at your kitchen table, drinking the coffee you just made her. Meanwhile, your sister's in the next room, laughing at something on her phone. And in about 4 minutes, both of those women were going to become strangers to me. The two people I trusted most in my adult life. And it wasn't because of something they'd done just once. It was because of what they'd been doing behind my back for 3 years. 3 whole years. My name's Dana, and I'm 38. I live in a suburb outside Columbus, Ohio, where the winters drag on and neighbors wave but don't pry. It used to feel like peace, but now it just feels like silence. I moved here from Cincinnati 9 years ago when I married Marcus. I married into his whole world, his family, his mother. And I really built something here that I was genuinely proud of. We had a house with good light and a vegetable garden that actually grew things. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but it felt real. It felt solid in the ways that actually matter. I was a speech therapist. I coached the neighbor kids' soccer team on Saturdays. I even made my own pasta when I had the time, which wasn't often, but I liked knowing I could. I really need you to tell me in the comments what you would have done. Because even now, I still go back and ask myself the exact same thing. How did I miss it? At what point do you start suspecting the people who are supposed to be in your corner? When does the trust stop? At what point does love just become a liability? My sister Renee is 3 years younger than me. For most of my life, she was my absolute favorite person on earth. We grew up sharing a room, and we had this language between us. It's that kind of shorthand you only get with someone who's seen you at your worst and stuck around anyway. She was the maid of honor at my wedding, and she was the very first person I called when I had a miscarriage at 11 weeks. That was the year before everything fell apart. I needed her more than anyone right then. She stayed on the phone with me for 2 hours that night. She didn't say a single useless thing, which is honestly rarer than it sounds. I trusted her the way you trust a wall. You don't even think about it. You just lean. Sandra, my mother-in-law, was a completely different kind of presence. She wasn't warm exactly, but she was reliable. I'd made peace with that years ago. She had opinions about how I kept the house, and stronger ones about how I kept her son. But she also showed up when I needed a casserole delivered or the dog watched during a work trip. We had an understanding. Or I thought we did. I thought we were two women who didn't always like each other, but respected the roles we played. What I didn't know was that Renee and Sandra had been talking. They were talking privately, and they were talking regularly. And they'd been doing it for 3 whole years, right behind my back. It all started when Marcus and I went through a rough patch about 2 years into the marriage. It was nothing catastrophic. He was stressed about work, and I was quietly grieving the pregnancy loss while pretending I wasn't. We had a few months where we were like 2 ships moving through the same house without actually touching. It felt normal for a hard season, and it was recoverable. And we did recover. But during that rough patch, I made a mistake. I called Renee one night, and I was honest in the way you're only honest with someone you completely trust. I told her I wasn't sure the marriage was working. I said I felt invisible, and that Marcus and I hadn't been close in months. I was starting to wonder if we ever really knew each other. I said things that were true at 11 o'clock on a Thursday in a low moment. They weren't the full truth of my life, but they were the truth of that night. And Renee had listened. She had listened. She had been kind. She had said the exact right things. I thought my secrets were safe with her. And then, apparently, she picked up her phone.
She called Sandra.
She called my mother-in-law. The minute we hung up, she made another call. I don't know what she said exactly, but the essence of it was this.
She told Marcus's mom that she was worried about me.
That I seemed unstable. She framed it as protective concern for Marcus. Sandra never needed much convincing to see me as inadequate. She took that seed and planted it somewhere permanent.
She began feeding Marcus quiet dops.
Nothing explosive. Sandra wasn't sloppy. It was more like water damage. Slow, invisible, structural. A comment here about how I seemed overwhelmed. A question there about whether I was withdrawing. She gently painted me as a woman on the verge of leaving. And Marcus, who trusted his mother's judgment completely, he listened. He became slightly more guarded, slightly more watchful. I felt it. The way you feel a draft from a window you can't find. And I blamed myself. I thought I had damaged us during that rough patch. I thought we were still healing. So I tried harder. I planned weekend trips. I initiated deep conversations. I poured my energy into fixing us. Heartbreaking realization, I thought I was rebuilding something real. I was actually just being observed. Every effort I made was being scrutinized, filtered through the exact lens Sandra had given him. I was being watched in my own home. This went on for 3 years. 3 years of Renee and Sandra having a relationship I didn't know existed. Built entirely out of things I had said in private. 3 years of my sister relaying information. I finally found out because of a phone. Sandra had left hers sitting right on the kitchen table when she went to the bathroom. It was just sitting there, completely unassuming. Suddenly, the screen lit up with a message from Renee. Just her name and a notification. I wasn't snooping, and I wasn't even actively suspicious right then. But I saw my sister's name pop up on my mother-in-law's phone, and my stomach just dropped. It was this visceral reaction that hit me way before my brain could even catch up. When Sandra came back into the room, I didn't say a word. I just handed her the phone, gave her a polite smile, and calmly refilled her coffee. For the next 4 hours, I existed in this very specific state of shock. I was functioning completely normally on the outside, while absolutely everything was falling apart on the inside. I just went through the motions of a regular Tuesday evening. I chopped vegetables and made dinner, moving around the kitchen like nothing had changed at all. I even helped Marcus's nephew with his math homework over a video call. I smiled at the screen and laughed at all the right moments, playing the part perfectly. Finally, the evening wound down. Sandra packed up and left, and Marcus went upstairs to take a shower. The house was suddenly very, very quiet. I stood alone in the dim kitchen and picked up my own phone. I didn't hesitate or second-guess myself. I just found my sister's contact and hit call. Renee answered on the second ring, her voice warm and immediate, just like always. I didn't even say hello. I just asked her exactly how long she'd been talking to Sandra. That pause that followed was exactly 1 second too long. In that tiny sliver of dead air, everything just clicked. I stood there listening to the heavy silence on the line. She finally asked what I meant, trying to play it off. I wasn't going to let her play dumb with me. I told her I meant the regular chats about my marriage, and I asked how long. She started stammering, saying it wasn't what I thought. I just cut her right there. I dropped my voice and asked her again, how long? She finally broke down and told me the truth. She didn't give me every single detail right then and there, but she gave me enough to understand the shape of it. For 3 whole years, I was the main topic of a secret relationship I didn't even know existed. Things I said in my lowest moments were just handed over. They used my vulnerability to plant seeds of doubt. I didn't cry on that phone call. Honestly, that surprised me more than anything else. I stood there waiting for the breakdown, but my eyes stayed completely dry. What I felt wasn't grief, not really. It was something way colder and a lot more clarifying. It felt like a blurry room suddenly snapping right into perfect focus. Suddenly, 1,000 tiny moments made perfect sense. It explained why Sandra always looked at me with that smug, knowing expression. It explained that invisible draft I'd been feeling in my own house. I didn't have the energy to scream or yell. I just told Renee I needed some time, and I hung up the phone. The house went completely quiet again. I sat down at the kitchen table in the dark for about 20 minutes. I wasn't plotting revenge or trying to burn it all down. I was just thinking with absolute clarity about what I had to do next. I was still sitting in the dark when I heard footsteps. Marcus came down, his hair damp from the shower. He stopped in the doorway, squinting into the shadows where I was sitting. He rubbed the back of his neck, confused by the dark room. He asked if I was okay, his voice heavy with exhaustion. I looked right at him, feeling that cold clarity, and said we needed to talk. We sat at that kitchen table until 2 in the morning. It was, without a doubt, the hardest conversation of my entire life. The house was completely silent around us, just the heavy weight of the words hanging in the air. I laid it all out for him, piece by piece. I watched his face as he processed what his mother and my sister had been doing for the last 3 years. He wasn't cruel about it, and he didn't try to deny it. As the reality set in, I saw his posture change. He crossed his arms, retreating into that blind loyalty he reserved for his mom. I watched him understand what she did, and then choose to defend her anyway. He didn't yell or get aggressive. He defended her with love, which is genuinely touching when it's pointed at someone who deserves it, and devastating when it isn't. He kept saying that she meant well, that she was just looking out for him. He told me Renee had just been worried, trying to reframe it as care. Then he looked away and suggested maybe I was reading it in the worst possible light. That's when everything snapped into place. That wasn't just a disagreement. It was the line I needed to find. I wasn't asking him to disown his mother. I just needed him to look at me and acknowledge that what happened was wrong. But he couldn't do it. Saying the words meant admitting his own part in letting it happen. I sat there in the dim light, staring at my husband, realizing the massive gulf between us. Marcus wasn't a bad man. He was just someone who'd been fed a distorted version of me and couldn't face his own failure. It didn't make him a villain, but it made him someone I couldn't stay with. We officially separated about 8 months after that night at the kitchen table. There wasn't any huge dramatic blowout or lawyers screaming at dawn. It was honestly just a lot of paperwork and quiet sadness. We'd have these occasional moments of real tenderness that honestly just made the whole thing harder to get through. He kept the house, so I had to figure out where I was going to go next. I ended up finding this apartment in a neighborhood I'd always loved. It felt like a completely blank slate, far away from all that heavy suburban silence. The new place had these massive windows that let in so much light. And there's a bakery 2 blocks down that makes the whole street smell like cardamom on weekend mornings. It was exactly what I needed. My sister Renee and I didn't speak a single word to each other for 7 months. The silence was heavy, But I really needed that space to figure out how to process what she did. When we finally did talk, it was halting. It was honest in a way our relationship had never been before, mostly because we'd never needed it to be. We were finally looking right at the ugly stuff. She apologized to me. And it was a real apology, not just some defensive excuse to make herself feel better. I genuinely believed she meant it. But I also understood something I hadn't known before. I realized she was actually capable of doing something like this. I can still love her, but I gotta keep that knowledge close to my chest now. As for Sandra, I let her go entirely. There was no big dramatic speech or final showdown. I simply stopped reaching out, and that was that. She just exists in the periphery of a life I'm not living anymore. I'm finally in a place where the air is clear, and I don't have to second guess the ground I'm standing on. If you've ever had someone look you in the eye and perform warmth while holding something against you, you know exactly what I felt when all of it settled. It's a hollow, confusing space to live in. Tell me in the comments. Tell me how you knew, because I know I'm not the only one who's walked through this. Because the worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. The betrayal was just the final crack in the foundation. The real damage was what it did to my head. The worst part was how long I'd felt the draft and blamed the windows. I spent years thinking I was the one letting the cold in. What I know now, at 38, in my apartment with the good light, is that I finally have my feet on solid ground. And with the cardamom smell on Saturday mornings, I know this for sure. I was never the unstable one. Not even for a second. I was never on the verge of leaving. That was a story they made up to make themselves feel better. I was actually fighting to stay. I was a woman in a hard season, trying to hold something together. I was grieving. And I was trying so hard to make it work. And the people I trusted most took that effort and reframed it as weakness. They took my honesty and used it against me. And the most extraordinary thing is that I came out of it not hardened. I've thought about this carefully. I came out of it accurate. I see things so much more clearly now. The fog of always second-guessing myself is just gone. Now I actually pay attention to what's underneath the surface. I definitely trust people a lot more slowly these days. And honestly, I don't apologize for it anymore. Protecting my peace is way more important than making someone else comfortable. I still love the people from my past, but it's different now. When my sister texts me, I answer, but that old blind trust is gone. We're still family, but my boundaries are pretty solid now. On the flip side, I'm loving a few new people way more, honestly. Without the pressure to pretend everything's perfect, my new friendships are just real. It's such a relief to just be exactly who I am. I've made a kind of peace with the fact that this isn't the life I planned. The whole blueprint I had for my 30s got completely thrown out. But honestly, I really love what's growing in its place. Sometimes the contrast between my old house and this place really hits me. I used to shrink myself down just to fit into a space that was suffocating me. Now I get to stretch out and actually fill my own life. This is the life I have, and I'm fiercely protective of it. Every quiet morning and every cup of coffee belongs entirely to me. I don't have to share my space with anyone's hidden agendas anymore. For a long time, I carried around so much shame about my marriage failing. I thought getting divorced meant I just didn't try hard enough. But I finally put all that heavy, useless baggage down. I've stopped being ashamed that it cost me something to get here. The pain and the betrayal were just the price of admission to finding my real self. I paid it, and I survived. As the sun fills up my apartment, I just take in the smell of cardamom and fresh air. This is my resolution, and it's quiet and beautiful. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
So, what do I know now?
I'm 38 years old, sitting in this apartment with the good light, smelling cardamom from down the street on a Saturday morning. And the biggest thing I know is this: I was never the unstable one. Not once. I was never actually on the verge of leaving my marriage, no matter how they tried to paint it. That was their narrative, not my reality. The truth is, I was just a woman going through a really hard season. I was grieving, I was tired, and I was just trying my best to hold something together that was fracturing. And the people I trusted most in the world, they took that effort, they took my vulnerability, and they completely reframed it as weakness. They used my hardest moments as evidence against me. But you know what the most extraordinary thing is about all of this? I came out of it, and I'm not hardened. I really thought I would be bitter, but I'm not. I've thought about this so carefully.
I didn't get hard, I just got accurate.
I see things so much more clearly now.
The fog is gone, and I know exactly what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I trust more slowly now. I take my time. And honestly, I love the same people from my past a little less completely. There's a boundary there that wasn't there before. But on the flip side, I'm able to love a few new people so much more honestly. There's no pretending anymore. I don't have to perform for anyone to earn my spot at the table. I've finally made a real kind of peace with the fact that this is not the life I planned. It's just not. But it's the life I have, and it's actually really beautiful. And the best part? I have completely stopped being ashamed that it cost me something to get here. I paid the price, and honestly, this piece was worth every single penny.